Hello dear students, I'm teacher Nadine Hellanie from Mahdi schools, and in today's lesson we're going to complete the second part of the passive voice. In this video we're going to identify the form and use of the passive voice in different tenses, differentiate between passive voice and active voice, transform sentences from the active to the passive and from the passive to the active, and construct sentences using the passive voice. I want you to have your English grammar handbook in front of you with a draft paper in order to write some notes. Before we start with the second part of the passive voice, we have to recall what we've taken in the first part. We've taken the uses of the passive voice, which are when the focus is on the action or the receiver of the action rather than the doer of the action, when the person who did the action is unknown, and when the action is a law or a rule. And as well, we took the general form of the passive voice, which is the receiver of the action plus the verb to be in its appropriate form plus the past participle of the main verb, and we ended with the by phrase. And don't forget that in order to form any passive voice, we have to make sure that the sentence includes an object, a receiver of the action, and we have to label the sentence's major parts. In the previous video, we applied this form on the simple present tense and on the simple past tense. Now, in the second part of the passive voice, we're going to apply the general form of the passive voice on the different tenses, starting with the present progressive. Ali is drinking orange juice. The first thing we need to do is to make sure that the verb in the sentence is a transitive, meaning that it has a receiver. Ali is drinking orange juice. What is Ali drinking? He is drinking orange juice. Thus, the receiver of the action is orange juice and the verb is transitive. Then, we'll start by labeling the major parts of the sentence. Ali is the doer of the action. Is drinking is the main verb. And orange juice is the receiver of the action. Now, in order to change the sentence into the passive voice, we have to follow the general form of the passive voice, starting with the receiver of the action, which is orange juice, and after that comes the appropriate form of the verb to be. Now, the question is, what is the form of the verb to be in the passive present progressive? And it is being. And after that comes the verb in the past participle, which is drunk, and the by phrase by Ali. So, the passive voice of the sentence Ali is drinking orange juice is orange juice is being drunk by Ali. Now here we used is being because orange juice is singular. But what if the object is plural? Ali is eating 2 apples. We'll follow the same rule, starting with the receiver of the action, which is 2 apples, and then comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. In the previous sentence, we said is being. But can we use the verb to be is being with the plural nouns? Great, of course not. So what form of the verb to be will be used with the plural nouns in the present progressive? Now try to guess it, dear students. In the singular form, we said is being. So what we have to change in the plural form? Great job. We'll substitute the is with are, and it will be are being, plus the verb in the past participle, which is eaten, plus the by phrase by Ali. So, Ali is eating 2 apples is in the active voice. In the passive voice, it will become 2 apples are being eaten by Ali. And we used are being because 2 apples is a plural. Now, can you deduce the general form of the passive voice in the present progressive? Try to do that, dear students. Great job. The general form is the object plus is or are being plus the verb in the past participle and then the by phrase. We use is being when the object is singular and we use are being when the object is plural. Now let's move to the past progressive, as in Ali was drinking orange juice. What was Ali drinking? He was drinking orange juice. Thus, the verb is transitive. It has a receiver. We'll start by labeling the major parts. Ali is the doer of the action. Was drinking is the main verb. And orange juice is the receiver of the action. By following the same general form of the passive voice, we will start with the receiver of the action, which is orange juice. and then comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. Now, the form of the verb to be in the past progressive is was being. We used was being because orange juice is singular. And after that comes the verb in the past participle, which is drunk, and the by phrase by Ali. So the active sentence, Ali was drinking orange juice, will be orange juice was being drunk by Ali in the passive voice. And if we wanted to change the receiver of the action from the singular into the plural, as in, Ali was eating 2 apples, can you guess what will we have to change? Let's see together. We'll follow the same rule, starting with the receiver of the action, which is 2 apples, and then the verb to be in its appropriate form. When our receiver was singular, we used was being. But can we use it now in the plural nouns? Great, of course not. So, what is the form of the verb to be with the plural nouns in the past progressive? I'm sure that you are able to know the form by your own. Great, the form is were being, and then comes the verb in the past participle, and the past participle of eating is eaten, and the by phrase by Ali. So, the passive voice of the active sentence, Ali was eating 2 apples, is 2 apples were being eaten by Ali. And we used were being because 2 apples, the receiver, is plural. So, it's your turn to deduce the general form of the passive voice in the past progressive. Remember to look at the general form and then apply it on the past progressive. Excellent work! The general form of the passive voice in the past progressive is the object plus was being or were being plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. So now, before we proceed with our lesson, let's have a small exercise in what we have taken with the 2 rules in front of us. The first rule is for the present progressive and the second rule is for the past progressive. Let's start by the first sentence. They are building a bridge to decrease gridlock. They are building a bridge. What are they building? A bridge. So the receiver of the action is a bridge, and we will start with that. They are building. Are building. Is it in the present progressive or the past progressive? Excellent. It's in the present progressive as the verb to be that is used is are. So we'll have to use the first rule. Now, a bridge, is it singular or plural? Great, it's singular. Thus we will use is being and then comes the verb in the past participle. The past participle of build is built to decrease gridlock. Let's move to the second sentence. The policemen were chasing a criminal yesterday. The policemen were chasing. Were chasing is in the past progressive. And what were they chasing? A criminal. So the receiver of the action is a criminal. We'll have to start with it. And as our verb were chasing is in the past progressive, we'll have to use the second rule. Now we have to choose whether to use was being or were being. Think of it, a criminal. Is it singular or plural? Excellent, it's singular and thus we'll use was being. And the past participle of chasing is chased by the policeman yesterday. Number 3. She's collecting donations to help poor people. She is collecting. Now it's your turn to guess the tense of this sentence. Excellent. It's in the present progressive as we use the verb to be is. Now, what is she collecting? Donations. So our receiver is donations and we're going to start with it. Will we use is being or are being with the word donations? Excellent. We'll use are being because donations is a plural. And after that comes the past participle of the word collect, which is collected to help poor people. The last sentence. The enemy was attacking the soldiers all through last night. Now, can you try to do the sentence by yourselves? Remember to start by identifying the tense of the sentence and then its receiver and whether you're going to use the singular form or the plural form of the verb to be. Now, let's check your answer. The tense of this sentence is the past progressive because we have the verb to be was. And what was the enemy attacking? The soldiers. So the soldiers is the receiver of the action, which we will start our sentence with. And after that comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. What verb to be did you use? Excellent. We'll have to use the verb to be were being because the soldiers are plural. And after that, we'll use the word attacked, the past participle of attack, and the by phrase by the enemy all through last night. Now let's have a mini application in order to check your comprehension. I want you to change these sentences from the active voice to the passive one. I'm going to read the sentences for you and then you will have to pause this video and solve them by yourselves. Number 1. They are building a new supermarket in the street. Number 2. Somebody was using my laptop. Number 3. The teacher was naming the winners when the bell rang. Number 4. The detective is investigating the crime scene right now. And the last one, they are producing thousands of movies every year. Now remember that you should start by identifying the tense of each sentence and then use the form of the passive voice in order to change it from the active to the passive. Let's check your answers. Number 1. They are building a new supermarket in the street. The main verb is are building and it is in the present progressive. What are they building? A new supermarket, the receiver of the action. The sentence is in the active voice and in the passive voice is going to be a new supermarket is being built in this street. Number 2. Somebody was using my laptop. Was using is the verb and it is in the past progressive. What was he using? My laptop. So we have to change this active voice to the passive one and it will be my laptop was being used. And we didn't mention the doer of the action because it's not important. Number 3. The teacher was naming the winners when the bell rang. Was naming is the main verb and it is in the past progressive. What was the teacher naming? The winners, the receiver of the action. Now here we have another verb which is rang. But as rang doesn't have a receiver, we can't change it into the passive voice. Now to change this active sentence to the passive voice, it will be the winners were being named by the teacher when the bell rang. Number 4. The detective is investigating the crime scene right now. Is investigating is the main verb and it is in the present progressive. What was the detective investigating? The crime scene, the receiver of the action. And in the passive voice it's going to be the crime scene is being investigated by the detective right now. The last one. They are producing thousands of movies every year. Are producing is the main verb and it is in the present progressive. Thousands of movies is the receiver of the action. And in the passive voice, it's going to be thousands of movies are being produced every year. I'm sure that you got them correct. Now let's see the passive voice in the present perfect tense. Ali has just drunk orange juice. We'll start by labeling the sentence. Ali is the doer of the action. Has just drunk is the main verb and orange juice is the receiver of the action. Now by following the same general form of the passive voice, we'll start by orange juice, which is the receiver of the action. And after that comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. And in this case, it is the present perfect form, which is has been, plus the participle form of the verb drink, which is drunk, and the by phrase by Ali. So the passive voice is going to be orange juice has been drunk by Ali. Now here we used has been because orange juice is singular. And if the receiver of the action was plural, as in Ali has eaten 2 apples, we will have to do some changes. We will start by the receiver of the action, which is 2 apples. and then comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. With the singular nouns, we used has been, but can we use it with the plural ones? Of course not. So what is the form of the verb to be with the plural nouns in the present perfect? Think of it. What is the plural of has been? Excellent job. It is have been. And then the verb in the past participle, which is eaten, and the by phrase by Ali. So the passive voice of the sentence will be 2 apples have been eaten by Ali. So can you guess the general form of the passive voice in the present perfect? Excellent. It is the object plus has been or have been plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. Now let's see the past perfect. Ali had drunk orange juice. We will follow the same rule starting by the receiver of the action, which is orange juice. And after that comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. But can we use has or have been? Of course not. So, what form of the verb to be are we going to use? I want you to think of it. If we used has or have been in the present perfect, what will we use in the past perfect? Excellent. We'll use had been plus the verb in the past participle, which is drunk, and then the by phrase by Ali. And the passive voice will be orange juice had been drunk by Ali. We use the verb to be had been with singular and plural objects. Now it's your turn to deduce the general form of the passive voice in the past perfect. Great job! It's formed from the object plus had been plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. Let's apply these 2 rules on the following sentences. We'll have the 2 rules in front of us in order to follow them. Number 1. The teacher has just distributed the worksheets. The teacher has just distributed. The verb is in the present perfect. And what has the teacher just distributed? The worksheets, the receiver of the action. Thus, we will start our sentence with it. Now we have to choose whether we use has been or have been. The worksheets is plural. Thus, we'll use have been. And we will include the word just between them. So it will be the worksheets have just been. And the past participle of the verb, which is distributed by the teacher. Number 2. They had cleaned the streets from garbage. They had cleaned. The verb is in the past perfect. And what had they cleaned? The streets, the receiver of the action that we will start with it. After that comes the verb to be, which is had been, plus the verb in the past participle, cleaned from garbage. The streets had been cleaned from garbage. In this sentence, we didn't look if the object is singular or plural because in the past perfect, we only use the verb to be had been. Number 3. They have already chosen the birthday cake. They have already chosen. The verb is in the present perfect. What have they already chosen? The birthday cake, the receiver of the action that we will start with it. Now, the birthday cake, is it singular or plural? Excellent, it's singular and thus we'll use has been. But remember to include the word already, so it will be the birthday cake has already been, plus the verb in the past participle which is chosen. So the sentence in the passive voice will be the birthday cake has already been chosen. The last one. The mayor had planted thousands of trees to decrease pollution. The mayor had planted. Now can you guess in which tense is this verb? Excellent. It's in the past perfect as the helping verb that is used is had. And what had the mayor planted? Thousands of trees, the receiver of the action. And after that comes the verb to be in the past perfect, which is had been, plus the past participle of the verb planted by the mayor to decrease pollution. Now let's see the passive voice in the future time. Ali will drink orange juice. We'll start by labeling the parts of the sentence. Ali is the doer of the action. Will drink is the main verb, and orange juice is the receiver of the action. By following the same general form of the passive voice, we will start by orange juice, which is the receiver of the action. And after that comes the verb to be. Now, what is the form of the verb to be in the future time? We will combine the word will plus be, so the verb to be is will be, plus the verb in the past participle, which is drunk, and the by phrase by Ali. Now, it's easy for you to conclude the general form of the passive voice in the future tense. Excellent. And it is the object plus will be plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. But what if the future time was formed by the verb be going to? As in the sentence, Ali is going to eat an apple. We will follow the same general form and will start with the receiver of the action. What is Ali going to eat? An apple. And after that comes the verb to be. Now here we have is going to before the main verb, which is eat, and we have to include it in the passive voice. So the verb to be will be is going to be plus the main verb in the past participle, which is eaten, and the by phrase by Ali. And if our receiver is plural, like Ali is going to eat 2 apples, can you guess what we'll have to change? Let's see together. We'll start with 2 apples, the receiver of the action, and then the verb to be. But can we use is going to be? Excellent. Of course not, as is used with singular nouns only. So we'll use are going to be plus the past participle of the verb, which is eaten, and the by phrase by Ali. I'm sure you are able to guess the general form of the passive voice with the future verb be going to. Great job! It is the object plus is going to be or are going to be plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. We use is going to be when the object is singular and are going to be when the object is plural. Now let's move to the last form of the uses of the passive voice, which is with the modals. But first, do you know what we mean by modals? Let's see. Modals are a type of auxiliary or helping verbs that are used to express ability, possibility, permission, or obligation. And also, modal phrases are used to express the same things as modals, but they are combined with the prepositions to. The modals are will and would, should, can, could, may, might, and must. And the modal phrases are have to, has to, had to, and ought to. And you have to note that after the modal or the modal phrase, the verb comes in its basic form. Now let's go back to our passive voice with the modals. Ali should eat an apple. We will start with the receiver of the action, which is an apple. And after that comes the verb to be in its appropriate form. With the modals, we use the same modal that is mentioned in the active sentence plus be. So in this sentence, it will be should be. And then comes the verb in the past participle, which is eaten, and the by phrase by Ali. So the sentence is an apple should be eaten by Ali. Let's take another example. And this one contains a modal phrase. Ali has to drink orange juice. We will start with the receiver of the action, which is orange juice, and after that the verb to be in its appropriate form. We will do as we did in the previous sentence. We'll use the modal phrase plus be. Our modal phrase here is has to, so it will be has to be. We said has to because orange juice is singular. However, if our receiver is plural, we will have to change the has to into have to. After that comes the verb in the past participle, which is drunk, and the by phrase by Ali. Now, can you figure out the general form of the passive voice with modals? Excellent. It consists of the object plus the modal or the modal phrase plus be plus the verb in the past participle and the by phrase. Let's take some examples on the last 3 rules that we've taken: the future will, the future verb going to, and the modals. Number 1. The government is going to build a recycling plant in the city. The government is going to. So we'll use the second rule of the future verb is going to. Now, what is the government going to build? A recycling plant, so we'll start with it. After that, we'll use is going to be or are going to be. A recycling plant is singular, thus we'll use is going to be, plus the verb in the past participle which is built in the city by the government. Let's take another example. She will follow the traffic rules. Will follow. It's the future tense. So we will follow the first rule. We will start with the receiver of the action. What will she follow? The traffic rules. Now, after that comes will plus be and then the verb in the past participle which is followed. Traffic rules will be followed. Number 3. Students are going to submit the projects in due time. In this sentence, we have a future verb are going to. And what are they going to submit? The projects. We will start with it. Now we'll have to decide the projects is singular or plural. Excellent, it's a plural, and thus we'll use are going to be. And then the past participle of the verb submit, which is submitted by the students in due time. The last example, they have to send the package through the Lebanon post. Have to send, it's a model phrase, so we'll use the third rule, starting with the receiver of the action, which is the package. Now, after the receiver of the action comes the model or the model phrase plus be. Here we have a model phrase which is have to, but can we use have to with a singular receiver which is the package? Excellent, of course not. So what we have to do is to change the have to into has to be. So the package has to be plus the verb in the past participle which is sent through the Lebanon post. Now let's see a quick revision of all what we have taken. The simple present tense, the simple past tense, the present progressive, the past progressive, the present perfect, the past perfect, the modals, and the future will. And the last one is when the verb contains a future going to. Now I want you to study these rules very well in order to solve the last exercise by your own. Let's move to the exercise. You have to change these sentences from the active to the passive voice. And you have to do this by your own. I'm going to read the sentences for you. They are building a new bridge around the city. Students celebrated the completion of the final exams. The magazine has sold 20,000 copies of today's article. The manager had contacted my parents. Police were wiping the place in search for the missing boy. And the last one, doctors have to wear masks while treating patients. Take your time in order to solve this exercise and remember that you can always go back to the revision in order to check your answers. Now that you have solved them by your own, you can check your answers. Number 1. They are building a new bridge around the city. The verb here is are building and it is in the present progressive. And what are they building? A new bridge. This active sentence will be a new bridge is being built around the city. Number 2. Students celebrated the completion of the final exams. Celebrated is our main verb and it is in the simple past tense. Its receiver is the completion of the final exams. And the sentence will be the completion of the final exams were celebrated by the students. Number 3. The magazine has sold 20,000 copies of today's article. Has sold is the main verb and it is in the present perfect. Its receiver is 20,000 copies of today's article and the sentence will be 20,000 copies of today's article have been sold by the magazine. Number 4. The manager had contacted my parents. Had contacted is the main verb in the past perfect and my parents is the receiver and the sentence will be my parents had been contacted by the manager. Number 5. Police were wiping the place in search for the missing boy. Were wiping is the main verb in the past progressive and the place is the receiver of the action. And the sentence will be the place was being wiped in search for the missing boy. The last one. Doctors have to wear masks while treating patients. Have to wear is the main verb that includes a modal phrase. Masks is the receiver of the action and it will be Masks have to be worn by doctors while treating patients. I wish that all of your answers were correct. Now what you have to do is to study the form and use of the passive voice that are mentioned in this video and solve practices 1, 2, and 3, pages 104, 105, and 106. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you had the greatest benefit.